Good morning. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome. Thank you all so much for being here this morning. Really appreciate the great turnout. If you would, please stand if you can and pledge the flag with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody. I'd especially like to welcome Tom McGuire, the chair of our board of directors. Tom. Warren Patterson, the vice chair of our board of directors. And Steve Fogel. Where are you, Steve? He's the secretary of our board of directors. Steve, hi. Thank you. I'd also like to welcome our resident board members, Carol Hubner, Carol, Sharon Taylor, Sharon, Dick Crabtree, and Rick Wright. Thank you all for being here. Lest I forget, please turn off and silence your cell phones. The purpose of this town hall is to provide you, as the residents of the Ark, with the most up-to-date information about the financial and marketing status of the Ark so that you can make an informed decision about expanding eligibility to anyone who qualifies. There will be briefings. Okay, now let's see if I can do this right. Yes. There will be briefings by Terry Jackson, Director of Marketing, Gordon Shoger, Chief Financial Officer, and Bill Klein, the Resident Council Finance Committee Chair, followed by comments by Tom McGuire and the Chair of our Board of Directors. I will be introducing each of them. After those remarks, there will be a question and answer period. Our panel of presenters will move up front here to face the audience for the Q&A. Bless you. I am requesting that all of us, that we all speak respectfully to one another and listen as each one is speaking. I will then close the session with some brief comments about the upcoming sequence of events in reference to ballots and your opportunity to vote on this important issue. Our panel will remain after if you did not get a chance to have your question answered. So we will proceed now with our first briefing from Terry Jackson. Terry? You want me to move this? You need it? Thank you. My booster.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much, Gloria. Thank you again to our board members and all of you who are here for this important topic and really important decision to be made moving forward. I am still relatively new here. I know I've met some of you and have enjoyed getting to know some of you better. I wanted to give a very brief bio of who I am because I feel like if I were in your shoes, I would want to know whether the person in this role who's going to help lead this community forward in marketing and sales really has the capability to do so. So I started in this aging services field 20 years ago. So in 2006, that was my first step into aging services. I've loved it and I've stayed in it ever since. My roles have been everything from a direct salesperson to a sales manager. I've worked in an operational capacity as director of a facility. I've had roles in marketing as well as sales, advertising, public relations. Additionally, I've worked for both for-profit and not-for-profit entities. As a salesperson in my 3 years with the company before I moved up, I was in the top 5 salespeople nationwide 3 years in a row, and that's out of a group of about 200 folks nationwide. My most recent experience was coming from a CCRC where I worked for 7 years as the director of marketing. And at one point, we dropped right below 90% occupancy, stayed at about 89% for a few months. brought that back up, and we achieved a full 100% occupancy in our community. So over the 7 years that I was there, we averaged 96% occupancy in our independent living. And again, I say this not to toot my own horn so much as to let you know that I have been in this industry. I have been successful in both sales, marketing, advertising, and in getting CCRCs to be at the level they need to be long-term, sustainable communities. So that's the professional side. On a personal side, I have my own mother in a CCRC. She has been in a CCRC in Ohio for over 10 years. My brother is the chaplain there. I am sold on the idea that a CCRC is absolutely the best route to go if folks can afford it, not only to afford the care that people need for the rest of their lives, but peace of mind for family members as well as folks living in CCRCs. So thank you for letting me expand a little bit about who I am. But again, if I were in your shoes, I would want to feel confident that the person who's leading this charge in marketing and sales actually has competency and commitment and some good experience. So, moving forward. It is backwards, thank you. After I tooted my own horn there, see what happens. So, the eligibility committee gave the administrative team a number of very specific questions that they wanted answered. And so we didn't really expound much past that. I was asked to explain to folks what has the expanded eligibility that has happened over the years, how has that impacted the ARC? And since 2003, you can see the number of E8s and E9s has been 5 move-ins, E6s and 7s, 2 move-ins, and the government service employees, 5. To have this expanded out a little bit more for more recent move-ins. So for this fiscal year, the folks who have moved in, 75% have been traditional military retirees. So officers who spent a career in the military through any of the branches of service. We still have about 75% move-ins this year are in that traditional category. 25%, that means, are folks who would only be here because eligibility had been expanded, and that includes government service employees, enlisted members, non-retired officers, or exceptions. So how is that impact on our pending move-ins? You can see the numbers move slightly. We are now at 63% have traditional full-time careers, retired officers, and the number is beginning to expand for enlisted members, non-retired officers, as well as GS employees. One more slide impacts folks that, if we include folks who are on hold here, as well as pending move-ins, we're at about 56% traditional retired officers and 44% of folks who have been impacted by eligibility in the past. We were also asked to discuss how does the ARC look compared to nationwide standards for occupancy. This is a 10-year look back, and our sources from NIC MAP data. That is pretty much the most highly respected data collection service for the aging services field. So over the past 10 years for this, and this is only comparing nonprofits with other nonprofit communities, it was a very stable line for a number of years, right at that 92, 93% occupancy. And then what happened here? Yep, the industry was significantly impacted. Dramatic decrease. We have been working for years to get back up to where we were, and as of the last quarter last year, we have nationwide achieved those numbers. So that's where the national numbers are. If we break it down to how do our various levels of care look compared to nationwide numbers, independent living nationwide is about 92.7% occupancy. Our quarters here, I don't know what I did.
With this?
Yes.
This is hiding everything.
I will not hide anything from now on. Thank you. Okay. I'll show you what button not to press, Gordon, when you get here. So if you look at our numbers, we have been climbing in the last couple of quarters. We do have more recent data than this. We are continuing to climb, but so is the national average. If we look at where everyone ended the end of the year, nationally we're up to 93.6% occupancy for independent living communities nationwide. ARC's current number is 89.73. So again, ticking up, but we're still below the national average. Our assisted living, skilled nursing, we're doing well. We are, for the most part, continuing to stay at or above national levels. The overall CCRC occupancy, our IL numbers bring us down. So we are below nationwide averages for CCRC occupancy. We were also asked to discuss what have other communities who formerly served only military or federal employees, what's happened over the years. In 2024, there were still several other CCRCs with eligibility restrictions. Those restrictions have been removed from all of those communities. So now they are open to folks who are at the right age and income level, but no longer required to be military or federal employees. Other communities who formerly served military members and have removed restrictions include our neighbors here in town, Blue Skies, formerly Air Force Village, and then communities from Florida, DC, Washington, and California. None of them have restrictions in place anymore for military military retirees exclusively. There are 2 communities in the country left with some restriction. The ARC has full restriction, meaning that only folks who have are honorably retired or discharged veterans from branches of any service, as well as all honorably retired or separated civilian federal employees, to include their spouses and surviving spouses. I do want to point out that that restriction applies to all of our service levels. So even if we occasionally have folks come in from the community who just need our health care, just need skilled nursing or assisted living, those restrictions are still in place for them. So they must still be and meet all the information on top, retired, discharged veterans or civil servants. One other community in the country who still has some restriction in place is Patriots Colony in Virginia. They are restricted in their independent living, but they have removed restrictions for their assisted living and health care. And that is all I was asked to report on. I know Gloria's going to keep us rolling, and then if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, but we'll do that at the end of the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, it's okay. Oh, thanks. And now Gordon Shoger will come up, our Chief Financial Officer, and give us a briefing. And like Terry said, the Q&A will be at the end of all the briefings, so kind of hang on to your questions. Do you want that?
I'm afraid I'd fall off. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Right down there. The wand of magic. Oh, yes, it worked. Well, there's a disconnect. Aaron? My slides look good, but I'm not sure about the rest of them here for you. I'm Gordon, and glad that have this opportunity to present some more financial information. Some of it may seem redundant if you were here in December for my director's dialogue meeting, but some of it's probably new, but it is essentially the same, exactly the same that was presented to the small committee regarding eligibility just a few weeks ago. So my presentation actually will be very short. As I tell you about the slides, you can visualize now. I promise I didn't hide anything, for sure. Maybe I needed the booster. I don't know. You think? That's the problem. There we go. That's some progress. Again, I'm Gordon Shoger, and glad we could talk. Maybe we do the Q&A right now to start with. It's coming back, I'm sure. Nick? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Very good. Okay. Well, very gingerly. Yes. Oh, amazing. There are several slides, so I'll try to get through them as quickly as possible without glazing you over totally. If you need a nap, go right ahead. For the eligibility committee, we were asked to provide some just big picture, frequently asked questions, as you can see, and how big we are in independent living, 448 units. So 1% is roughly 4.5. Operating rate, which you see a lot, and as far as the quarterly reports and other places bantied about, is just simply, are we spending more than what we're taking in? And if we are spending more, then it's over 100. If we're spending less than what we're taking in, it's under 100. So then long term, as you look at life plan communities like us through the nation, and my experience of about 30 years, it runs, if you're not in the 90s somewhere, in 96, 95, 92, 94, some of those numbers, then it becomes a real struggle long term to build cash reserves and support refurbishment plans like we have here and we'd like to continue with. Days cash is another metric that you hear about, and basically it's our reserves, everything, all the cash that we have in the bank, all the cash that we have and investments that we have, typically at Frost and Broadway is most of it, then how many days cash that would turn into if we had no revenue coming in. then how many days could we pay all of our expenses before we ran out of money? And that would be 271 days. So that's a pretty good metric on the health of the reserve that we have. So we'll go up. Next slide. Okay. Then another thing that was asked questions regarding was how does this work with entrance fees and monthly service fees and the other fees that we bring in? What's really the metric? What's really the plan there? Because the question is, how do we pay off our bond debt? How do we pay our bills? And without the entrance fee money coming in, it's basically impossible to pay the bond debt because of everything that comes in. You see what we've had to pay out every year since 2020. And then if we don't bring in enough entrance fees, enough dollars, then we've been withdrawing from Frost periodically. As you can see on the right-hand column, those amounts that have come out of our Frost reserves in those. Now, the other thing that doesn't show up on here, just for full disclosure, the Frost account is invested quite well. They do a great job for us. So it's not just depleting down, it does grow on its own, and we report that as part of our realized gain and dividends and interest, also unrealized gain if they haven't cashed in. So the ARC reserves, they're at the bottom of 29.5 million currently. Next slide. And I think I explained this already. What if happens if we have no revenue? And I'm not sure what that scenario would be, but we would have 270 days cash on hand to pay those bills with. Then another question comes through is what happens to people in independent living? Well, sometimes the good Lord calls them home. Sometimes they move through the continuum. Sometimes there's a few every year that leave for various and sundry reasons. I think we've had 5 so far this fiscal year, and to a T, all of them have left to be closer to family. They've got family in other parts of the country, and their family came in and said, look, we want to see our grandfather, we want to see our grandmother, and we want them to live close to us, so they've moved away. And that's been the primary reason all the way through of any of these numbers that you see here. Then another question was, what happens down the line? There's been the idea that, and they do, monthly service fees have a dramatic impact over time. It's really the rule of 72. If you take an interest rate and divide it into 72, you can tell how many years it will take for that investment, typically the way it's measured, to double. So at 4% or 5%, it's definitely a cumulative impact. And the implication being, with our occupancy hovering 88, 89, that's a different metric. That's a different equation on what our monthly service fee increases will need to be in the future. You've seen what they've been in the past. You've seen interest rates go up. You've seen inflation go up. And you've seen us have to meet that demand for services with increased monthly service fees. Now, if we're at, I'm not going to make any promises, and I really can't, but if we're at 92, 94, 96, that relieves some of the pressure on the monthly service fees because we have that many more folks contributing to the overall benefit of the ARC by paying monthly service fees. So also have this in graph form because I like to do graphs sometimes. And so that you can see the difference there over time, what that difference might make. Then, at the risk of shutting down the computer totally, I will replenish the liquid in my throat. So, what do we do here? We're a life plan community, and we have several levels of care, and each one of those levels of care contribute to the overall revenue of the community. Y'all probably, most all of you are in independent living, and you know what that looks like every month when you get your monthly service fee bill, your statement. Then assisted living is the same thing, but assisted living and nursing is typically, and we do it here, it's by the day, and those fees come through and they pay for the care. Typically, though, as in most, well, every life plan community that I've been associated with it, which is several dozen, more than that maybe, the assisted living and nursing, they struggle to break even, especially nursing will generally lose money more than it makes. And so the rest of it, you have to look at the community as a whole to see what the profitability might be. Assisted living typically is about break even if you're lucky. Next slide. Where are we in January with about 716 residents? Almost 600 in independent living. I would say there's not quite 600 in here today right now, but there's pretty close to a full house. And then the other levels of care as well. So it's really, whatever you do in independent living is leveraged against everything else as far as the number of residents and also the revenue, and we'll see that in a little bit here. Segue into where we get our revenue. It's all these different fees, and then some of it from Medicare TRICARE reimbursement, and as I mentioned before, dividends and interest on investments. Then if you put a nice round graph, it has independent living there, the big blue on the right, and then all the other pieces come into play about which you couldn't operate as a CCRC. You have to all those other pieces of revenue, even catering and guest meals there, and other being everything that doesn't fit in the other boxes. So you can see where independent living and what rate increases we would have to do there, or what our occupancy we would need in independent living, all are heavily weighted and leveraged in this equation. Next is expenses, and with salary and benefits and bond interest added in, a big expense that you'll see. So basically 51% as far as salaries and benefits. I know you've probably heard me talk about 55% as far as salary and benefits, but that's if you take out the bond interest out of the equation. Everything else goes up and bond interest goes back to zero. But you can see that color there in 14%. That's a big part of our expenses every year. Dwarfs a lot of other things. Food, I think, is there at 7%. And so we have next slide, which just an example, because a lot of times the operating rate, it's like, well, what does that really mean? So I broke this down as far as just big round numbers, and as far as CCRCs, these are little round numbers because no community has only $1 million in revenue unless it's tiny, and then what your expenses are. So if you brought in $1 million in revenue, and your expenses were $1 million or $1,050,000, then your operating rate would be 105%. So just what does that really mean? And being over on your expenses compared to revenue. Next is inflation. I'm sure you've all enjoyed my finance town halls, he said sarcastically, each year where I announce the monthly service fee increase for the year. And a lot of inflation has really driven that over the last few years, and it still is hanging on, but it's improved a lot, inflation. This was a really interesting slide when I first drew it up. Like I say, sometimes I like graphs really well. But this one shows the red, which is our monthly fees. As you've noticed, they've gone up, and how that's moved since 2022 compared to actually our expenses as reported out on the EMA reports. The raw numbers have gone up about 25% in, what would that be, 4 years? And yet our fees have gone up about 17. So over time, that's not sustainable. The next thing is, where are we compared to the national average? Like Terry had some very good numbers there as far as what we look like compared to everybody else in the whole country. And we have been in that range with everyone else as far as rate increases. Even though, as far as marketing, and I made this analogy the other day, and I feel like still it holds, in marketing we have to be snipers, and we have to pick people out, this one, and this one, and this one. And and convince them to come in here and that they want to move in here and join us, write a big check to come in. But everybody else, as Terry documented with these other communities, they're using shotguns, and 12 gauge double shot. I mean, the analogy there is pretty close because we don't get to blast our advertising everywhere, because then we have to turn down all these people that call in, they want to come in. We have to tell them, well, no, I'm sorry, you're not qualified, you're not eligible. So we can't advertise like blue skies. So we have to pick out very select places to spend our marketing dollars. This is this year, fiscal year 26, and a slide you've probably not seen before, but it shows everything that we expect to come in with the entrance fees and gain. We actually make money on the operating side of it, and then we have investment gains at 6%. Maybe they'll probably be better than that as long as stock market keeps hitting new highs. But cash flow, those are pretty hard numbers right there as far as what comes in, what we have to spend all the way through on everything else that comes out of that, out of those entrance fees. And so at the end of the day, we're actually budgeted for a net loss of 42,000 on our, and that would be reflected. Where would that come from? Where would that end up? That would end up in our days cash on hand, as our days cash on hand. If everything goes according to budget, then we would be 42,000 less on our days cash on hand at the end of the year. What happens with entrance fees then? We have one entrance fee, obviously, that's about the average right now. And then cash flow use, unit turnover, what it takes to turn that one unit over to get it ready, rehabbed, and back in shape for new people coming in. And then so there's a positive net cash flow that comes out of that of about 115,000. And how does that compare? Then what does that do for us? That's just a little bit more than 1 day's cash on hand added to the overall cash flow. But then we have these other things back here that we have to pay, like capital improvements, bond interest, and principal, then tends to use up that 115. And just a raw history here, you've probably seen this before. I update it every year, just our maintenance fees and our entrance fee increases over time, and what they've been. A big increase when we brought on the CDP units as a special case, as a special product, and a much higher entrance fee for those. And then what the monthly service fees have been over time, a little more than 4%. Then operating history, well, what happened then? But because of the losses, as you can see in other graphs that I've given out here already, over time we tend to miss the 100 mark. We make our budget, but it's very hard to budget less than 100 unless you have the occupancy and the rate increases to support that. So over time, over 11 years, about $7 million raw cash loss. It's another nice graph that I thought was really helpful because I like graphs. But these are the operating rates as actual as reported on the financials every year and then projected out for this year as far as the budget each year as far as the operating rate. So some years a little better than others, but the average year is that we're over 100 and we're spending more than what we're taking in. What we expect this year for the budget for independent living. Right now, Terry and her team are doing wonderful, and with all the support from all the residents and everywhere else on that, and we're out above that as far as currently, but to end up with the growth every month projected. The next one is, where have we been over the last few years? We're kind of stuck on a groove with 88 and 89 as far as independent living. Assisted living has moved up and more people moving through the continuum. SNF has gone higher with more people moving through the continuum. And you see how that looks over time to be 88, 88, 88, 89, 87 in independent this last year. New entrance fees all over the board. You see what COVID did to us in 22, 21, and then rebound from that. And then last year was a very tough year with only 22 out of the whole fiscal year of 25. We've already surpassed that, and I think from what we have on the books, we're going to be out above the 38 for this year. So just a real rebound as far as entrance fees is concerned, which has been a lifesaver compared to another year at 22, which I just have to say, we wouldn't be having this discussion. We would have a discussion, but it wouldn't be this one if we had another year at 22. Total bond debt, this is another question that came up. I want to see, well, why do we have bond debt? Why do we have bond debt? Well, let's go back to 2016. The 2010 bonds were then rolled into the 2016 bonds, but the 2010 bonds came about because of the lakeside development. So there was about $60 million that was spent over there. They've been paid down some. But in 2016, we refinanced all of those and saved about $600,000 a year on interest. The interest rates came down over time, and 2016 was about the lowest point, and we were able to get a better interest rate on all that money, so we were able to refinance and get, so right now there's the 2016 bonds about $50 million. The 2018 bonds, also originally came out of the cost overruns across the bridge, as I call it, the lakeside. There was a need for more funds to cover the construction as the other funds were depleted, and so they went back in and financed a new bond issue in 2012. And then after I got here, I looked at that and said, well, a lot of these are variable. Well, the whole issue was variable rate, which sounded really good in 2018, but doesn't sound very good today. Okay, so we looked at that and decided, well, let's just lock in the rate that we can and go from there. And we did. We saved about $200,000 a year on as far as interest with the 2018 bonds. That's about $21 million. Then this last issue is what we're looking at right here. This whole refurb, 46 apartments, all the way through the high rise, all the way through the campus, really. And that's about $41 million, and what that was used for, as far as why we have that debt. Then the numbers, the bond debt is about $112 million, and the different interest rates and the maturities. With the final maturity on the 22 bonds, 2057, I'll be 99, and I'll be nearing retirement at that point. So, I'll help you with that when the time comes. And what does that turn into? What does that really mean, though? It means we have $29 million in days cash on hand, but that's only 26% of the outstanding debt. So that's a metric that S&P always brings up. They look at it and say, well, we don't like that too well, but you're kind of doing okay, but we're not really sure. But they look at our other metrics and they say, well, we're going to keep you stable for now. We're not going to downgrade you. We're not going to upgrade you. But you're okay for right now. And that's kind of the feedback we get from S&P about all of our metrics, actually. Then if you've ever bought a house or you've ever done a mortgage, you look at the total that you're going to have to pay on that. It's kind of astounding. All the payments, interest and principal, you go on a 30-year loan, and it's like, wow, that's a lot. And you thought it was $200,000, but you're really paying about $600,000 out of your pocket. Well, this is the same type of calculation in that, we've got $112 million in debt, and we're going to pay interest on that all the way along. But at the end of the day, we're going to pay about $216 million total, like I say, by the time I'm 99. So, and all that adds up to $216 million right there. That was another question. Well, what does that really look like? Because that's kind of a scary number. Then we talked about this a little bit earlier, but for this slide, I went clear back to 2018. And over the years, some years we've had enough money come in from entrance fees and the overall business as a whole, not just entrance fees, but overall, to pay the bond payments and the interest payments and the paying off a bond. We pay about 2 bonds every year. Well, what does that look like? If we don't have the money, we go to the reserves, which means going to Frost and pull that money out. So over these several years, you've got about $50 million that we've paid, and about 17, a little more than 17, came out of reserves. So that's where anything that we do eventually shows up in our reserve level, our days cash on hand, because at the end of the day, accounting is full of lots of ridiculous adjustments. But at the end of the day, it's your cash flow, it's your operating rate, it's what really goes in. And that's why, like S&P, they look at our days cash on hand, they look at our operating rate, they look at our age of plant, everything else that comes into that plate as far as the health of the community. And at the end of the day, you can see where a lot of our payments on the bonds and interest have come out of reserves. And just kind of current events, we just made this payment in January from entrance fees. Thank you, Terry. And we did not have to dip into the reserves for this last payment in January. And then we have the mid-year payment is always a lot bigger because we're paying off bonds and also paying the same interest over 6 months. So that's what that looks like, about $5 million coming due in July, which if the entrance fees stays strong, we should have, no promises, of course, because I'm a CPA, but we will hopefully, Lord willing, and other things don't happen, we will be able to make those out of operating, which to me means out of the entrance fees, as long as that stays strong. Then good news, I've got some slides here that are not really good news, but they're kind of like, why did he put that up there? But this one is really good news. We applied for employee retention credit, which is one of those programs that came out of COVID to help businesses like ours and all the way across the country to stay in business and to boost their ability to hire people and keep folks on the payroll. And this actually this all calculated on how many people we had on payroll and from 2021. And so we applied for this back in 24, and it was accepted as a claim. They have our claim. And then we didn't hear anything for a long time. But there one day in November, Steve called me and said, hey, we got a check. And I'm like, well, okay, good. 2.6 million, yes, from one of the 2 quarters. Now, we're expecting about that much again, at least about 2 million on the other quarter. We qualified for 2 quarters, first quarter of 21 and second quarter of 21. And it's very complicated. Not that I couldn't have figured it out, but I got better things to do. So we employed Clifton Larson Allen, a national firm, to calculate that for us, because they've done it for multiple companies all across the country. And also they're a national accounting firm. They are the biggest firm as far as accounting is concerned that audits and deals with financial statements for senior living. So they're like the gold standard as far as senior living accounting firm. They did the calculation, they signed the claim, and they will stand by it, which they already have. This second quarter that's out there right now, yet to be paid, is under audit. We don't know what that means exactly, other than we sent them a nice big stack of documents, myself and Clifton Larson Allen, to substantiate the claim. So we're still looking for the other half of that, and really should come in, we hopefully, as soon as they decide to write checks again down in Washington. Then I think this is my final slide. And this is the one that bothers me the most. If people ask me, well, what bothers you about the ARC? Well, watch the graph. I like graphs, but I don't like this one. This is our days cash over time from 2017. And then you see what COVID did to us. But before we got to COVID, those days cash were eroding away. And what happened in 22? Well, if you remember, we got that nice big settlement from our friends at Philadelphia Insurance, and they sent us about 14 million, and that all went into days cash. And then you see the rest of the graph. We're seeing an uptick now from the ERC money, which I just mentioned. But the long-term trend there is concerning, and it's down, and it just doesn't drift away quickly. It drifts away it drifts away quickly. So we just have to be cognizant of that as we go forward and what that's going to look like for our future as those metrics come to fruition. I think that's the end of my slides. Thank you. You don't do that?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Gordon. Our next speaker is Bill Klein, the chair of the Resident Council Finance Committee. I do want to say, before Bill talks, that he is the representative from the Resident Council, and he represents the Finance Committee as a chair. He does not speak, though, for the Resident Council as a whole. He speaks as the Finance Committee chair. So I just want to make that clear for everybody. Bill, please. Thank you.
Hey, the great news is I don't have any slides. I'm gonna do something a little different. You know, they talk about my bio, but nobody ever talks about 20 years I spent as a professor of American government and international relations. So I want to start by giving you a little bit of history that probably 25% of you in here know about. But I'm going to take you all the way back to the Great Depression. The stock market's crashed. People are jumping out of windows. They've lost all their money. And things are not very good. Okay, Hoover is the president of the United States, and he's talking about reducing veteran pay. Now remember, these are World War I guys, and but Anyway, he lets them build this Shantyville. It's called Hooverville in Anacostia. And there are about 43,000 people there, including the troops, the veterans, and their families. And, it's kind of a mess, but they go from there and they go in and lobby. He put them far enough away from the Capitol that they wouldn't be bothersome. But finally, they did get to be bothersome. And how do you think he settled this deal? Yeah, he sent a regiment commanded by Douglas MacArthur, and he sent a battalion with 6 tanks commanded by George Patton. And they went in and they burned down this shanty town, and they killed some veterans and civilians, but destroyed that camp. And I'm telling you this because what happened next is Roosevelt ran on a platform that he's going to reduce the national debt. Okay? So he gets elected, and he comes in and puts a bill before the Congress called the Economy Act. Okay? And he did it just a few weeks after he was elected. But there are a lot of people that had a bad taste in their mouth from this burning of Hooverville. And so the Democrats didn't want to vote for the bill. And I mean, FDR is a Democrat. But the Republicans and a few conservative Democrats helped him pass that economy bill. Now, it passed on March the 20th, 1933. And what did that bill do? Well, it reduced military salaries, okay? If you were active duty, your salary came down a significant amount of money. I know my mother-in-law and my folk, they were stationed in Hawaii, the most expensive place in the world, and they struggled, okay? But even worse, what did it do to the veterans' salaries? Reduced it by 50%, okay? So now the veterans once that bill was passed, the veterans are all head up, and they go around and circle the Capitol. I mean, you talk about this January 6th thing. They circled the Capitol, and the Congress had to run for their lives. They ran out of town, okay, and that went on for a couple of weeks, and they finally came back. But I'm just telling you, that was not a good time, and the military was a target. And let's hope. And why am I telling you this? Okay, I'm telling you this because when I first started teaching government, the national debt was $5 trillion. When I retired in 2018, the national debt was $21 trillion. By the end of this year, the national debt's going to be $40 trillion. Now, one of the things I taught my classes is, fiscal policy is when you lower or raise taxes, and when you also do the same thing with interest rates. But when your national debt gets so far over a percentage of your GDP, whatever you do with fiscal policy doesn't make any difference. It just won't work. So we're at that point. And I just tell you this because all of you better be sitting out there thinking that the government doesn't do something rash and have another bill, which they can pass a bill and reduce salaries. By the way, they also reduced the salaries of retired Supreme Court justices in half, and that's when the court cases started. You can believe that. Okay. So enough of history. Let me talk about the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee was put in place by George McCall and Wade Taylor. They figured that you needed to know what's going on with the finance of the Ark. And so that was put into place in 2019. And they've been sort of a firewall, okay? When things get bad, they wave the red flag. I'm going to read you. Deanne Busick was the chair of the Finance Committee for a number of years, and Deanne had banking experience with Frost, but she wrote this letter to the board through the resident council, and it's pretty strident. She says, "We are bleeding cash Financial assets dropped $4 million between 9/30/2018 and 9/30/2019. And she goes on and makes these points. What did this letter do? This letter began the board taking a look at eligibility, because we realized that we had to make more people eligible for the ARC. And we went through those steps. I won't go through them, but there were a number of different things that happened. And finally, we got eligibility, and we began to raise our occupancy rate. Now, when we had all the big construction during COVID, and by the way, the marketing department did a marvelous job. During COVID, we actually sustained that occupancy rate with all this construction going and this place torn up, and they did a great job. But it went up. But we had this smooth-talking guy, Brian, I can't remember his last name, who was in charge of all that construction. But he says, man, we're going to go to 93%. We're going to be 93% occupancy rate and so forth. And we did go up there and hit it, but then we didn't last long. We came back down. Last year, I got to tell you, was a disaster. I call it a disaster. I mean, Gordon doesn't, but we had to pull $8.5 million out of reserves. And I'll tell you, we can't have many years like that, or we will be in trouble. Okay. So what are we doing today? Well, we're improving. And Terry's already told you that. The occupancy rate is going up. But listen, even if we get to 92%, you're barely breaking even. We need to be more than that. We need to be at 95%, 96%. Falcons Landing, that decided in 24 to take in all, their occupancy rate is 96%. Okay? If we got to 96%, it gives management the wherewithal to do all kinds of improvements. One of the things we need to do, and it's got to be done, is we've got to upgrade our health care. And that's on the books. Carol over there is driving that, but we've got to do that. And another thing is, those monthly fees, when that occupancy rate goes up, okay, it's a good chance those monthly fees are going to come down, and it's going to put money in your pocket. Oh, you don't think so? All right, Gordon. Well, let me put it this way. I'll tell you one thing. There's no chance in heck that they're going to go down if we don't do something. Okay. Would you like 5.8% increase? Look, let's take my example. I came in here 7.5 years ago. Okay, my monthly rate then was around $4,000. It's now almost $7,000. Okay, if I live another 7 years, it'll be $11,000. That's almost all my retired pay. The compounding of it is not good, particularly if you're going 4.8 to 5.8. So we need to get that down. And it's not going to bother me. I want to be dead before anything happens. But the younger people in here, we need to protect them. Okay. And by the way, the Finance Committee voted unanimously to open up the ARC. Okay. And the Finance Committee is composed of some pretty good guys. There are 4 heirs. We've got a bank examiner, a guy in banking, and we even have a Marine. But it's what I'm trying to tell you is they're good people. They look at this. They look at the finances. They work with Gordon, and they know where we're going. And we're putting up a firewall now, saying, look, the more people are going to CCRCs now than they have in 50 years, and they're out there, and we need to get them. Now let's talk about that. Everybody says, oh, the culture. Look, guys, look at where we've gone with the culture. First, we were all officers retired, all right, and then we moved the needle, And we've changed it, we changed the culture already. Has it hurt anything? Do you think Air Force Village culture has changed? Do you think civilians are in charge of running Air Force Village? Heck no, I've got friends out there. The military is still in charge, okay? And they're going to be in charge for years. But if we can just take, let's just take 10 or 12 units that we sell to civilians. Maybe it's a lawyer, maybe it's a CEO exec, maybe it's a doctor. But we bring them in, we sell them that unit, we get 12 units, and we just popped up 3+%, okay? And that's going to change things. Did I do bad math?
It's only 2%. 4.5.
4.5 is 9, okay, 9 houses, okay, I'm gonna sell 10 or 12. Okay, all right. So, okay, Gloria told me if I go over 10 minutes, she's gonna take the shepherd's hook and pull me out. And I'm done, but let me tell you something. We really need to examine this, and we need to do the right thing. If you don't do it today, eventually, I'm guaranteeing you it's gonna happen. And it's a smart thing to do, okay? It protects you. Okay, thank you.
Gloria, I'm speaking out of turn. This is Warren Patterson.
Yes.
Fine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
No, we can't.
Okay, sir, I love a good historian, and I have to pose this question to you in the audience. You talked about the Shantytown incident that Douglas MacArthur, Chief of Staff, ordered against the veterans. Trivia question. Who was General MacArthur's aide-de-camp at the time? Dwight D. Eisenhower, who hated the fact he gave that order. Thanks for making me happy.
And now we have some remarks from our Chair of the Board of Directors, Tom McGuire. Thanks, Tom.
I too don't have any slides, so I don't think I can mess this up at all. But first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for attending the town hall today. You know, it's an important topic, and to get informed and educated on this topic is very important for all of us. And I want to thank Gloria, and I want to thank Dick Crabtree for leading up this effort. It hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy because it is an emotional besides a financial effort. And people get emotional over wanting to change, and especially a change that would really be significant to the overall well-being of the ARC. However, Bill Klein said it, and so have a few other people, there aren't hundreds of people trying to come through this door every time we increase eligibility. And it's not going to change either if we go all the way on eligibility. However, it's the responsibility of the Board of Directors to ensure we stay on sound financial footing, and that is why we are proactive about some very emotional and sensitive topics. And this being one of them, and what's on my mind the most, Gordon had his own slide on days cash on hand, which is important, but mine is the slide that says we have $29,500,000 in reserve, and they say $112 million in debt. Well, if you look at the big picture, it's $216 million in debt because they're bonds and we got to pay them off. And I don't know where we'd get the money to pay them off early. So divide that 29.5 into 216 million, and you can see what our total reserve is and how many years we could go having a year like we had last year. And the best time to make change is when going's good. Terry has done a great job in the marketing field. Things are looking up right now. And if we're going to do anything, now's the time to do it, not when we are scrambling to survive. And that is very important to understand. Reserve history. From July 1st, 2018 until June 30th, 2020, I was the board treasurer. And I had a chance to see the financials up close and personal. and Dan Busick was not very far off from what was going on. If you look at the history of our reserves, we are very, very fortunate to have gotten a settlement of $14 million from the lawsuit. We are very fortunate to get the $3 million from the ERC credits. That's $17 million. If we didn't get that money, our reserves would be $12.5 million. And guess what? The 14 millions and the 3 millions don't come along every day. They may never come along again. We do not do a very good job of replacing reserves because we're trying to do cash on hand and maintain the standards that you all like to have. And to do that, we need to have a continuous income from maintenance fees. That's our business model. Do I like it or don't like it? Does it really matter? It's what it is. And that's what we're dealing with. And that's what we want to make sure survives as time goes on. Gordon showed to you that days cash on hand is a very worrisome thing because it can go down very quickly. And folks, if it goes down that quickly and the reserves go down that quickly, I'm going to tell you all right now that all of us are in this together. And if the ARC cannot pay its bills, we are all liable for those bills. And I want to see the ARC pay its bills. Bill, you made a comment about maintenance fees. I'm going to probably think of what I thought you said instead of what you said. Maintenance fees will not decrease if it goes to 96%. Future raises in maintenance fees have a good chance of not being as high and may go down significantly. But what we have right now is not going to change. It's a baseline of dollars that keeps us in business day in and day out. So what we're looking at is the future. You saw what Bill told you on the compounding of maintenance fees, and now he's going to go broke in 7 years. So we're going to start a Bill Klein fund. Maybe we can help him out. The other thing is the military in general. How many of you or your spouses were in during the Vietnam War? A whole bunch of us. There were 3.5 million active duty in uniform throughout the services at that time. Today there are 1.3 million. The population in 2011 that were military, or veterans I should say, was 9.1%. Today it's 6.1%, and it's not going to go up. Meanwhile, I did some research in the last couple of days. There are roughly 19,000 for-profit and nonprofit retirement communities and over 30,000 assisted living communities. There's competition all over this country. And the thing is that they're building new ones every single year, and lots of new ones, because we're the tsunami of baby boomers that's going through this right now. So the competition is going to remain keen. I have friends over at Franklin's at Sonterra and such. There are a lot of military over there if you go back and start knocking on doors. People have choices. People move because they want to be where their grandkids are, where family is, and where they have a support group that they'd like to be around. That happens, and it's going to continue to happen. So the question of all of you here is, what do you want to see 5, 10, 15 years from now? My charter as the board chair is, where are we going to be 30 years from now? And what legacy are we all going to leave for those coming down here in the future? And that, to me, is very, very important. So one of the things that I want to let you know is, some have asked us, is the board bound by the results of the voting? The simple answer is no, we are not. The board is independent of anything that's done here at the ARC. However, the board is intently interested in your input. And if you look at the last 3 increases in eligibility, we have supported what you have voted on all 3 of those. And the individuals that did that, 2 of them over here, Lawson Magruder and Rick Wright, they were in the middle of all that, and they were independent of anything on the board. We did not ask them to do anything. We asked the staff, we asked residents, and everybody else to be included in that. Excuse me for a second. Okay, there are 15 board members, and every board member votes independently. And I hope that they're voting with their own voice and nobody else's voice. I'd like you to know that the eligibility committee also voted unanimously, and it wasn't in their charter to do it. Let's take a look at a name change. So I have commissioned a small group of folks to do the due diligence. What would it take to do a name change? Legally, financially, marketing-wise, and such, what would that take? Okay, I want to make it clear in this room, we are not changing the name of the Ark at this time. My tour is done in June, and during my tenure, that time I have remaining, I am not advocating changing the name. I'm advocating what does it take so we can be informed if we're going to go down that path. And I think that's very important. And I told them to look at it two ways, a total change with the IRS or a doing business as change. We remain the Army residence community and we're doing business as something else. Air Force Village is doing business as blue skies right now. So which way do we want to go? What would it cost? What are the pros and cons? So that's where I'm going to leave it as I come to the end of my tenure here. So the only thing that I'm asking you to do today is only one thing. Vote. Vote what you want to vote, but get out there and vote. Let your voice be heard. We need to know that. Now, will this ever come up again? It probably will. It's going to keep on coming up probably every several months or so, because we have to look at the tea leaves day in and day out, listen to what Gordon has to say, listen to what Terry has to say, and look at the bottom line. So, that's just a fact of life, the way it's going to go. So again, today, I thank you very much for your time, and I'm going to turn it back over to Gloria.
Well, that's interesting. My computer says Tom McGuire, but up there it still says Bill Klein. Sorry about that, Tom. Okay. Okay, well, it's okay. Oh, no.
I did it.
I didn't do it. While he's doing that.
I did it.
While he's doing that, we're going to have all the people who presented come up front, and it's time for questions. So if you'll give us just a minute, we don't really need that
We don't
right
need
now.
it anymore.
No. Ooh. Oh, okay. Okay. I just got a quick question, and let me make sure everybody's clear. Opening up eligibility is opening it up to anyone who can meet the age, financial, and medical requirements of the marketing department, and so it's opened up to anybody who can meet those requirements, okay? So if that's a question that's been answered, okay? All right, and Emily, you've got one, and who else has one? Okay, thanks, Crystal. Okay, yeah, so questions, okay.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. My question is for Terry. How would the marketing approach change if this change were implemented? I'm sorry. And how soon would this change be implemented?
Okay, so part of our research in this is that I contacted every single one of these communities that we had up on the board in terms of what did the change look like for them? What did their marketing strategies do to accommodate? Some folks were very forthcoming. Many folks didn't want to share their secrets of the trade, but what appears really critical to me is to increase our local marketing. I spend a lot of money every year with mower magazines, with targeted materials nationwide that we are currently advertising for federal employees, for targeting the folks that we have to target costs a whole lot of money, while the numbers show in this most recent round of numbers we looked at, 77.5% of all folks who moved in were from the state of Texas. 70% were from the greater San Antonio area, so to include Bulverde, Burning, Garden Ridge, all the surrounding areas. So clearly, the marketing that has been done in the past, this highly targeted, expensive marketing nationwide, is not drawing folks here. The vast majority of folks who came here from out of state came because family is here. So again, our marketing department has a healthy budget. It's just being strained by targeting folks on a nationwide basis. So that would be the biggest change, was to change from that large target to a much more local, much more embedded feel within the San Antonio and surrounding area.
I've got a next lady up here next. Just a minute. Go ahead. Doug, go ahead.
Okay. I think you touched on it, but I wonder if there's a deeper line here that we can look at. Of the CCRCs who were restricted and then became unrestricted, is there any conglomeration of data that tells us what's happened to them? Or do you have a perspective on what has happened to those that responded to you? That would, I think, inform us of what others have experienced.
Sorry. I knew these numbers would fly out of my brain as soon as they started getting asked. Again, some folks were very forthcoming with their data. Typically, folks in a sales and marketing position tend to be highly competitive, and we often don't share that data with each other. I can say, yeah, I didn't get a whole lot of numbers. Patriots Landing has varied between 90 all the way up to 100%, but averaged in the low 70s. Patriots Colony was the only, I'm going to stand up. Patriots Colony was the only other currently restricted CCRC. They are at 95%, and that's why they're not considering a full expansion, because they are already where they need to be. They were not where they needed to be for the assisted living and skilled nursing, so they opened it up for that. I spoke with, I think it's Falcons Landing.
Terry, I think the question they lend itself more to culturally well.
Thank you.
What was the impact?
So the question was, is it more of a cultural change or more of a, was there a cultural change? That's a good question, and it's a very difficult one because, in my opinion, it's very subjective. What is the culture? If you look at the data here, our culture has changed. It went from retired officers in the Army to now we have more retired Air Force folks here than anybody else. We have government service employees. We have folks who were just a short time, either as officers or as enlisted folks. All of these people are interspersed here now, and you would know better than I would. The questions I have had with folks were, what has happened to the culture? Has there been a diminishment in the last few years? Those are questions that you have to answer. My counterparts, their thought was no. People are happy that our occupancy rate is increasing, that we are in a better financial state. I just don't want to speculate because this is your culture, and it will continue to be your culture. So the impetus will be on you. Are we going to continue to stay a service-driven community, or are we going to continue to attract these folks? And then that will be part of marketing too, because that's who we want to attract here.
Okay, thank you. This question is for Gordon. Gordon, if we have 59.3% of our earnings coming in, our revenue coming in from maintenance fees, what are we doing to reduce the amount of discounts that are being given to some folks coming in as far as discounts in the amount of maintenance fee that they're paying monthly? And that would also include, I guess, the discounts that are coming from the Life Step program that probably is not totally functional at this point. Does that make sense? 2 questions.
I'm not sure how to answer that because I'm not sure what the question actually is. There's very few discounts in independent living. I mean, the rates are the rates. And then the new rates, one thing we've done over time over the last few years since I've been here is we disconnected current rates for folks, the cohort, the folks that have been here a long time, let those rates go up. We've been moving our marketing rates higher. So typically somebody comes in new for a 1,200 square foot apartment is going to be paying more than somebody else who's been here 10 years. And that's business practice all the way across the industry. I was surprised when I came in that we were not doing that because that's just a typical marketing piece. The other side of that is if you don't do that, then you're missing out on, over time, that cumulative effect of some turnover and those folks coming in at a higher rate. Maybe, pursue this, are you referring to discounts in nursing or assisted living?
No, what I'm referring to are the discounts on the 50% contract. I believe the single maintenance rate is reduced by 20% in perpetuity. It is not a marketing one-year incentive. It is a reduction in maintenance fee for single occupancy in perpetuity. Is that not true?
Yeah, that's true. It's on the independent living side.
Yes, definitely.
Of those fees,
independent side.
once a person moves through the continuum, it doesn't have any other application other than their standard contract discounts.
Correct. Okay, agree with that. But
Okay.
should not everyone be paying their fair share of the monthly maintenance fees where most of our expenses happen? Thank you.
Well, the people paying that have paid 50% refund are get that discount, and that's a forward-looking put us in an attractive place within the overall marketing. Long term, it works out about even because they only get 50% of their entrance fee back, and they're paying 43% higher entrance fee than on a zero plan. So anybody who comes in on a 90 gets 90% back eventually. Anybody comes in on a 50% plan gets 50% back. But both of those groups pay 143% as much as someone on a zero plan. So you can graph that out. At some point, that person breaks even and the ARC breaks even. But we typically see a few of those. What's the number going to come out on the M at the end of the week? There's just a few percentage points of the overall ARC are in the 50 plan and under that plan. And we typically see folks who they're asset heavy, but monthly income a little bit light, and that appeals to them. Or they can just choose it because they want to do that about their fees. There's no, at the end of the day, it's to the ARC's benefit. I just have to say that, long term, because they only get a 50% refund.
Hello. Is this on? Okay. Terry, you and I arrived at the ARC about the same time. And I will want to give you... Okay, I'm not used to this. Kudos for what I've seen you do. I think there's one element that is missing, and I don't know if it falls under your marketing or in public relations, But we need to get our name out there, as you said, to this area, because that's who mainly lives here. And I think we're missing not having media relations. We have functions here that are outstanding that perhaps the news media could be invited to cover, like the Glee Club that's coming. And this would get our name out there, establish it with the different news media, perhaps have a speakers bureau that news media could refer to here at the Ark when they have military questions or historical questions. And this would get the name out there in front of our competition. And it would take a while to establish a relationship with the different media, but we could become their go-to place.
Thank you. I agree with you. I think Steve would agree with you as well. And in that effort, proactively, we brought on a PR consultant, started the beginning of this fiscal year for a 6-month term. We have extended that through the end of this year, and she's doing a bang-up job for us. We have had TV, we have had radio, we have had newspaper spreads that have been done because she's a former TV broadcaster. She has deep media ties. We are pitching, Leslie and I are going next week to Sinclair Broadcasting to pitch monthly TV slots on healthy aging, with the ARC being the subject matter experts. We have, and cut me off if I'm saying, I really did want to prepare for you all just what we do as a marketing department, because it is extremely robust, it is extremely varied, it is well thought out by not only myself, who's been in this industry for 20 years and been very successful, but with the PR consult, with our advertising strategists. The biggest expense that we pay is it's called SEM, search engine marketing. And for just about everybody who is looking nowadays for retirement living, where do they look? Where's your phone? Yes. They go on the computer. They use their phones, and that is where we put the biggest amount of our money, because it is so highly targetable. We can hit people, I have very specific age, income, asset demographics. Right now I need to include in there our eligibility restrictions. So not only are we targeting $1 million and above in assets, I'm targeting, former civilian and military folks nationwide. So that is the most important thing any marketing company can do nowadays, is get yourself as highly rated as possible through search engine marketing. We do a lot of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, digital ads, website management, so that we keep optimizing the folks that come in. We do content marketing, so we provide articles that are printed in magazines. We'll have a 2-page spread in Stroll magazine, which is a local magazine, another 2-page, that'll be in April. Next month, we'll have a 2-page spread in My SA, and that's a digital platform that will also be targeting this extremely targeted market. We have direct mailers starting. I just approved that one yesterday. That's for 4 different speaker series we'll have throughout the year here. So the idea of bringing people in here, I couldn't agree more. This place is beautiful. And so we have a strategy in place to, again, have subject matter experts speak quarterly. So we get more and more targeted folks at the right income and asset level to come in here. We've got a billboard. We've got targeted military ads through MOA monthly ads, targeted emails to MOA members. We advertise with the American Legion magazine, with I never say it right, NARF, the National Association for Retired Federal Employees. We do radio ads. Again, we did some TV last year. We're pitching for monthly segments, and then we're in a number of local publications in our targeted markets. So Stone Oak, Bulverde, some in Windcrest, Garden Ridge, Chavano Park. And then we have really increased our community involvement. I am a member of the Military Affairs Committee. We are inviting MOA in 3 times annually now instead of just once. We are collaborating with the city of San Antonio. Just had an event here on campus. And we will continue with the PR consultant who is excellent. And it was an incredible investment on our team's part. So please understand, this is about as robust as it gets. And advertising and marketing is like throwing spaghetti at a wall. You throw as much as possible, you see what sticks, and you keep refining it. I answered already, the biggest change that I would see is that we target it better. We target it right to the market of folks who are already coming to us. It's much easier to move from Garden Ridge than it is to move from California. And we've got the numbers, we've got the data, we just need to target a little better. I'm going to let someone else answer.
My wife Judy and I, we moved here from Blue Skies. We're some refugees, and we spent 3 years over there. And I can tell you that they've opened it all up, just so you know, and their occupancy rate is in the low 80s, not in the 95 percentile. So there must be something going on. Now, the other thing that bothered me over there is you could already see the culture changing. So I just want to give you those thoughts because we just came from there, and there's some other people here that have just came recently. So you need to take that into consideration. And the other thing is, maybe you could do, I don't know, is whenever you're talking about the marketing side and getting people in, but what about fundraising for a specific cause, the health care? Thank you.
Well, you're going to answer that, aren't you?
I don't know if you wanted a response to that. I just know anybody who has been to Blue Skies knows there's 2 different products, really, 2 different campuses. One campus has had much less investment in keeping it up. The newer side is far better occupied. They're not in an easy location for folks to go to. We have an incredible product to sell. We, and Steve might need to remind me on the numbers, but one of our goals in our strategic plan is to keep our plant age well below the national average. And that's important because people don't move to a community that looks like it's aging and that isn't keeping up. And I think we're seeing some problems with that because Blue Skies has a much older plant age than what we've committed to doing here.
You did mention fundraising, and we do have a plan for phase 2 to raise money for that, but we can't do it right now. We're not financially strong enough, so just going to be honest. So we're in an extended planning period until things improve because it's a big project for phase 2, and so that's on the agenda, but we have to be able to crawl before we can walk. Sorry to say that.
Yes, I have a question. I have a question. I know you stated that you want to open this up, and you talked about the eligibility requirements, which are age, financial, and medical. Well, what about do you do, and I don't know if there's any legal implications to this, do you do a background check on folks to make sure that they are of sound character and not having any outstanding criminal activity or warrants and things like this, if we're going to open this up to a lot of other people coming in?
Thank you.
That's a very fair question. Anybody who comes here undergoes a background check at any level of entrance, whether that's healthcare, assisted living, or here. And I know we put out that there are financial and physical requirements to be here. Just remember, the financial requirements are very, very high. I think Tom mentioned we've got about 55.8 million retirees over age 65 in this country. The number of I'm sorry, not military. Correct. Thank you. The overall population over age 65 in this country is 55.8 million. The number of those folks who have 1 million or higher in assets is 4.7%. So if you look at those numbers and then you realize that 4.7%, that's a much tinier number for veterans and federal civil service employees who are in there. So the reason when I buy these mailing lists that I target only 1 million or above is because, as you saw on Gordon's slide, our average entrance fee is just over $300,000. When we look at, does someone qualify financially, we want their assets to be 3 times the entrance fee. So if we're looking at over $300,000, we want folks 1 million and above. If we, and asset or income as well, if your monthly income is $4,000, we want you to have at least twice that in your income. So the number of folks that we are looking at already belong in a tiny percentage of the eligible retirees in this country. And yes, background checks are done on every single person that comes in. We are somewhat limited in how deeply we can dive outside of that because we are bound by fair housing rules. We cannot discriminate on people based on their gender, race, religion. So we have to be very careful about how much farther we dive, but those background checks are critical and those will continue.
Just a word to Gordon to start out with. I think you did a terrific job on laying out the real numbers. But my question is on eligibility. Is that how are we going to compete if we extend the eligibility? Because normally it's either by cost or differentiation. As being military only, we would be giving up that differentiation. So how are we going to compete with these other organizations? You started it. I mean, it takes a lot of money to get in here. So have you done a canvas map of strategy to compare all the different things for all our competitive CCRCs? And then that was at the macro level. At the micro level, I don't understand all these things that are in the turnover thing. Are they really being done in turnover? How much money have we collected? Because if they're sitting there, 12 of them, it costs over $1 million a year just for them to sit there. That's income we're losing. So it's a bigger thing. I think just narrowing it on eligibility, you got to step back and look at the whole process.
Okay.
Hey, everyone. I was at Air Force Village West in California. We went bankrupt, and part of it was they couldn't get people in, and that was a local thing where someone said something bad. But we opened it up to the civilians, if you had the money, and it was no change at all at that facility.
Can I answer your question? I'll go back to the question. Let's see, what was the question? We're trying to figure that out. Well, one thing that I don't think we've mentioned, we may have talked about it a little bit, is these other communities that Terry's done research on and we've been looking at over the years, is typically, even after a few years, the non-military percentage will run from anywhere from 3 to 9 of the overall community. Then as they open it up, then it switches and it moves up from, it's still a less than 10% fraction of all their people. So so many things that we do in finance or marketing or the future is done incrementally. The other openings that we've had as far as eligibility, without those, that's pretty easy to do the math where we would be less than blue skies with our occupancy. And I hate to compare ourselves to blue skies because they have some problems that we don't have, okay? And the two campuses and they've done some radical things lately that we haven't had to do yet. And I don't anticipate that we will, but I surely hope that we don't do yet. They've closed one of their healthcare centers, okay? Their commitment to healthcare is obviously less than ours. But on the other side of it, what was the other question? Oh, about units that are open. Well, we have, what's our vacancy, about 40-something right now? Open units. And the monthly bills go out to those, and it's all zeros on the empty units. That's the real problem. Right.
It has the 10% down. You have a lot of them sitting there, and when they're sitting there, how soon does it take to get them into production where we can get the part of the entrance fee and the maintenance fee?
Right, good question. I'll answer that real clearly. Let's do a poll, everybody. When you all put your 10% down, were you ready to come in that day and move in that day? Okay? You were ready to go and had everything done. You had your house sold. You were ready to move in. Okay? All right, so, yeah, there's a few. Okay? All right. What we see mostly is that folks, they're shopping, and when they make up their mind, they're ready to come here. But maybe they don't have their house sold. Maybe they don't have everything loaded in a U-Haul ready to come in that day. And we're not a rental property where we would have people coming in just that next day once they put their money down. We do a lot of work to customize our units, and that takes a little bit of time. Because if we had the money, lots of it would take, to bring every single unit that's empty at $200,000, $150,000, $100,000, if we had all that money, we could bring all those empty units ready to move in. And then what? We're waiting for somebody to move in that next day. So there's a process. Most people, it's a process for them to move in, and it's a process for us to get the unit ready. And a lot of times that's 30 days, 45, 60. The idea that we could have those units that are being ready tomorrow, all we gotta do is write a check. And that means that our days cash on hand goes in half. Easily, I can do the math. To bring those all to perfect for somebody to move in. But a lot of people want to pick their own carpet. They want to pick their color of their walls. What does their kitchen look like? They want to make those choices. So they have the ability to make those choices. We get that ready, they move in. It's the empty units that add up to zeros, and that's the problem.
I'm very cognizant of the time. We're going to take a couple more questions, about 2 more questions, and then the panel will stay up here. You can come up and ask questions. I have a few closing comments I want to make, so we're just going to take 2 more questions.
I have more of a comment than a question. I'm not really concerned about the culture change. If you add one more criteria to the eligibility, and that's professional status. I don't want some guy who won the lottery and he's lived down in the swamps of Mississippi or something. He's got the money, but that's going to make a culture change. I think we're all professional people who are educated. What I want to see is educational level maintained because the culture will not change so much. And that's, I would ask that you take a look at that, adding that to the eligibility. A professional kind of reputation.
While we may love to be able to do that, we are bound by fair housing standards, and we simply can't discriminate. We simply can't ask people what their education levels are. As you said, most people who have the kind of money needed to come in here are going to be more educated than not.
I think this question is to Mr. McGuire. I'm not sure. I want to know if there's anything in our legal documents, Bill Klein, the one in the end with the blue shirt with the microphone right now. Is there anything in our legal documents that would restrict a for-profit company from buying the Ark if we and the board determines that it's in the best interest of this community to go with a private management and private ownership? I only ask that question because 2 people living in CCRCs in Denver and the surrounding areas have recently been purchased.
Well, I plead a fifth because I don't have your answer. Normally, when we get questions like that, I turn it to Steve, who goes to our lawyer, and the lawyer will come back with an answer. So we owe you an answer on that.
Is there one more question? One more question?
This is for Terry. I think you made the comment that most of the recent people who came here were from Texas. I would encourage you to continue that. I came here in 76 as my last job in the Air Force. I knew an Army colonel whose widow came here, and we worked with here and visited here for 17 years. My wife was a volunteer at Wilford Hall in the command section, and we visited before it was called Blue Skies, but okay? There was no way I would go there. I would encourage you to specifically target Air Force personnel in the San Antonio area. 20 years ago, there were more Air Force residents here than Army residents. I remember that, okay?
Thank you very much. Did you need to? No? Okay. I'm going to make some closing remarks. Well, thank you all very much for your questions and for your courtesy. I just want to say in closing that ballots in blank envelopes will begin being passed out tomorrow by your resident council primary or alternate representative. These will not be placed in your mailboxes. This is a yes or no vote only. No comments will be recorded if you put some comment on your ballot. Only independent living residents are to vote. Return your sealed blank envelope with your ballot in it to the person, primary or alternate, who gave it to you no later than noon on Monday, the 23rd of February. There will be TV and portal coverage on this town hall, one of the town halls as follows. And that will be, starting tonight, it will be on the portal. And hopefully tonight it will be on channel 1890 at 7 o'clock. And then every day from now until the 22nd of February, it will be on channel 1890 at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 7 p.m. every day. So if you know somebody who wasn't able to make the town hall, it will be on channel 1890 those 3 times every day. And now, just to make it clear, for the eligibility to expand to anyone, this must pass by 2/3 of the vote of those people who vote. So in other words, if 400 people vote, it'll be 2/3 of 400. It's not of the population of the residents in total of the ARC. It's only of those who vote. I want to take this time to thank Dick Crabtree and Steve Fuller for all their help as we worked through this committee. Thank you both very much. And then lastly, I want to thank you all very much for taking this so seriously. And as Tom McGuire said, please vote. Thank you all. Thank you.